After nearly 20 years of dominance, the Godzilla franchise was running on fumes. The Showa era ended quietly, with box office decline and a clear pivot to younger viewers. Godzilla vanished from Japanese theaters but found new life in the US American networks, eager for content and capitalizing on Saturday morning cartoons, which saw value in licensing the character. Hanna-Barbera secured the rights and turned Godzilla into a kid-friendly animated series. The show emerged during a shift in children's programming, with growing concern over media violence. The FCC pressured networks to soften their content. This shaped how Godzilla could be portrayed in the cartoon. He could breathe fire and fight monsters, but not destroy cities or endanger civilians. Every action had to be justified. The result was a neutered version of the character, reactive, restrained, and predictable. Toei handled the animation for Season 1, adding some visual texture missing from most Hanna-Barbera productions. The motion was stiff and the designs were flat, but the monster work occasionally showed a clear Japanese influence. The contrast between that aesthetic and the show's American framework gave it an odd, sometimes compelling look. It felt like it was caught between two worlds, but never fully embraced either. The voice cast reflected the style of the time.
Come on, Godzilla! You can take him!
Ted Cassidy, who played Lurch from the Addams Family, provided Godzilla's vocal effects. Jeff David and Hilly Hicks voiced the human crew with the broad delivery common in 70s cartoons.
I've been sailing since I was a boy, and this is the first time I've ever felt seasick.
I'm getting a strange reading, Captain Majors.
For many American kids, this was their introduction to Godzilla, a towering hero who was summoned by humans, accompanied by a talking dragon called Godzuki, while battling various monsters, and then disappearing until next week. Godzilla! 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 The show never connected itself to the films. It offered no backstory for who Godzilla really is, and it rarely aimed higher than basic entertainment, but it kept the character visible and relevant in the US. This is the version of Godzilla that lived on TV screens between theatrical runs. It didn't expand the mythology or build on the films, but its purpose was pretty simple. Just fill a programming slot and keep the name alive for a new audience. Each episode of the Hanna-Barbera series follows a very strict, formula-driven structure, and unfortunately, the show's greatest flaw is its absolute commitment to that very routine. Nearly every episode unfolds the exact same way. The Calico crew reaches a new location, encounters an unusual phenomenon, and is attacked by a monster. After a few scenes of exposition and scrambling, Godzilla is summoned to resolve the conflict. The fight is brief, the monster is defeated, and the crew sails away as if nothing happened. This repetition ultimately drains the show of any momentum. There's never any build-up or payoff, there's no evolving stakes, and there's no sense that anything matters beyond the next episode. The format feels engineered for syndication and nothing more. Every outcome is predetermined, and that sense of tension that defines Godzilla's best stories is nowhere to be found. In the show, nothing carries over from one episode to the next. The story always resets. And I get it, that's the point, but still, that's a big problem that I have with it. Godzilla's role within this structure is equally mechanical. He never really investigates or just reacts to anything. He doesn't even seem aware of events until he's just summoned by the humans. Once he does appear, he performs his function, which is defeat the monster, roar, and then leave. The creature that once symbolized uncontrollable natural forces becomes a controlled solution. And to me, that shift erases the core of what really makes Godzilla a compelling character. Without any agency or consequence, he becomes nothing more than a background element in his own series, a tool rather than a character.
Go get him, Godzilla!
The inclusion, too, of Godzuki just compounds the show's problems. He's framed as being Godzilla's nephew, and he serves as comedic relief and a link for the younger audiences, but his presence just constantly undercuts any moments of tension or drama. Every attempt to introduce danger or suspense is disrupted by slapstick antics or shrill cries for help. I understand why he exists. Saturday morning cartoons were built on mascots like this, but his presence deflates any possible tension that the story might have carried.
Come on, Godzuki, up! Up in the air!
He is the Scrappy-Doo of this series.
I'm not afraid. Let me get him. Let me get him.
In my opinion, I think this choice just reveals how far the series drifts from the cinematic roots of the Toho films. Godzuki isn't there to deepen the mythology or to expand the narrative. He's there to make the show feel safe for the kiddies, and once the tone becomes safe, the show loses any sense of scale. Godzilla no longer feels like a towering force of nature, he's just a guest star on someone else's adventure.
Tell him, Zuki!
The monster designs reflect the same lack of ambition. Most are forgettable, with them just being oversized insects, amorphous blobs, or lizard-like creatures with no distinct identity. They appear, they serve the narrative function, and then they disappear without leaving an impression. There's no creativity or thematic purpose, or really any sense of spectacle. It often feels like the designs were churned out to meet a production quota, rather than to actually excite the animation in the viewers, or even the creators. There are some rare exceptions though, like Firebird with its mythic influence, and it has this really striking silhouette that carries genuine presence. The Golden Guardian is slow and ancient, and it feels deliberately crafted rather than being hastily assembled. These monsters stand out because they hint at a version of the show that could have existed, one with intention, artistry, and a willingness to engage with actual ideas. They prove that the limitations of the series were not inherent to the format. They were the result of choices made by executives. Occasionally, the show gestures towards larger ideas like environmental destruction, lost civilizations, or forgotten technology, but these threads never develop into anything meaningful. They exist to justify a monster's existence and then are discarded as soon as that battle ends. That approach ultimately leaves the series hollow. Science fiction is used as set dressing as opposed to a vehicle for questions or commentary. It feels like the writers knew the genre's vocabulary but had no interest in its grammar because it's a show meant for kids, so who cares, right? At the end of the day, though, it was that mindset that led to the show being a success. Despite its countless flaws, the show played a significant role in keeping Godzilla present in American pop culture. For many children in the late 1970s and early 80s, this was their first encounter with the character. You gotta remember, the internet wasn't a thing back then, so access to the original films was very limited or downright impossible, and home video was still in its infancy. Hell, this was the case for Godzilla fans until fairly recently, with certain movies only being available on VHS until around 10 years ago. Going back almost 50 years, for a generation that grew up watching Saturday morning television, this was their Godzilla. He wasn't really a metaphor for nuclear trauma, but a familiar hero who showed up, fought a monster, and then disappeared before lunchtime. This mattered because the franchise was dormant in Japan. After Terror of Mechagodzilla in 1975, Toho put Godzilla on ice for almost a decade, and Hanna-Barbera's version filled that vacuum and ensured the name didn't vanish from public consciousness and fade into total obscurity. However compromised the portrayal, it kept the brand visible, and it gave it staying power in a market that might have otherwise forgotten it. Even today, the series is remembered. It's sometimes mocked, sometimes affectionately so, in fan discussions, parodies, and nostalgic retrospectives like the one you're watching right now. And that's why I'm still trying my best to not completely disrespect this show, because it did a lot for Godzilla as a brand. Sure, I could go on and on about how Toho has absolutely no idea how to market Godzilla outside of Japan, but this show created a ton of fans, and it's hard to outright hate something that lifted up a franchise during one of its darkest eras. Keeping all of that in mind, though, from my perspective, the series doesn't hold up whatsoever in the 2020s, and it hardly even justifies its own existence nowadays. With a plethora of Godzilla media available to you, Actively seeking the show out to get your Godzilla fix is like an alcoholic chugging hand sanitizer to get their fix. Unless you grew up watching it and you want to revisit the good old days, this show is just not worth your time. The animation is stiff, the writing is shallow, and the tone is so watered down and neutered that nothing ever leaves a mark. It's difficult to even discuss it as part of the greater Godzilla franchise without adding a metric fuckton of disclaimers. Even the weakest Showa-era films have a pulse. Even the more kid-friendly ones actually aim for something, however clumsily, and their creators actually tried to stretch their limitations and tell a story. This cartoon gives no indication that anyone tried. It feels like a product assembled to meet a deadline and slap a recognizable name on a time slot. If you replaced Godzilla with Gamera or King Kong or any other monster, nothing would change with this show. And to me, that speaks volumes about how disconnected it is from the spirit of the source material. The best comparison I can make is that this is basically the equivalence of DC's Super Friends.
In the great hall of the Justice League, there are assembled the world's 4 greatest heroes.
That show reduced iconic characters to functional templates, where Superman just saves people, Batman uses gadgets, Aquaman talks to fish. It works because the brand was strong enough to coast. It doesn't hold up today by any means. There are much better stories in both film and TV surrounding these characters, but the show introduced these characters to so many kids in the US, and it ultimately turned them into lifelong fans as a result. Does it hold up? No. Is it the best Superman story you could ever get? Absolutely not. Go watch the Christopher Reeve movies or the latest James Gunn movie. Is it the best Batman story ever? No. Go watch The Batman or The Dark Knight. Is it the best Wonder Woman story? Maybe?
Max Lord, you're putting yourself and everyone else in grave danger. I need you to give me the stone.
I don't know, you kind of some slim pickings nowadays. I really hope they do something with Wonder Woman. But regardless, getting back to Godzilla, the cartoon from Hanna-Barbera ultimately follows the same logic as Super Friends, where it sacrifices personality and meaning for familiarity and marketability. It's not unwatchable. It isn't downright painful. I mean, if you have to binge it, it kind of is, because it's just the same episode over and over again. But at the end of the day, it doesn't have anything to say. Nonetheless, though, it's still a chapter that explains how Godzilla survived almost 10 whole years without any theatrical feature-length films and stayed lodged in the American imagination for decades to come. And with all that out of the way, I'm Cole McCormick, you're watching Firewood Media. This is just one small part of my massive Godzilla retrospective project, where I revisit and review every single Godzilla movie and TV show. I've already covered the entire Showa era, the Monsterverse, Zone Fighter, and everything in between. Now that the Hanna-Barbera cartoon is behind us, we're moving into the next major phase of the franchise, the Heisei era. These are the films from the late 1980s through the mid-1990s that gave Godzilla a darker tone, more consistent continuity, and some of the most iconic monsters in the series. I'm really excited to dig into that run, and stay tuned because my retrospective on The Return of Godzilla drops on October 10th. It will be made available to channel members first, hopefully by the end of September. I'm not too sure. We'll see what happens. It's being edited right now as I'm filming this video. Speaking of channel members, big thank you to them. For just $1.99 a month, you can support the channel directly and get early access to new videos just like this. In fact, this was a member's first video. You don't need to become a member if it's not the right time. Just being here watching and supporting the work means a lot. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Peace out.